and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. Hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to another free course, or you can call it a Galactic Update, Ascension Update, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I'm here with you, and we're going to discuss the integration of Galactic and Earth family as one, because this is not only important for ourselves personally, and as well as when we spread out this expansion of our perception, that's the things that are happening as a collective of our planetary ascension, but it's also connected with the greater perspective of ascension that I would say is a multidimensional parallel ascension, or an ascension that's happening at galactic level and then in parallel to many different galactic levels, which comes and adds up to the universal level. So I'm currently working on the last, truly last, final 12th mastery initiation, or the gateway for the cosmic ascension mastery, which will be the cosmic union and ascension, which will be the universal level of consciousness attainment and self-realization on that level. As you know, self-realization is concurrent on many different levels that have to do with us as in the blossoming, expanding lotus that's coming more and more into the conscious recognition of itself in relation to the whole, and therefore expanding into the creative potential of that whole. So it's different levels we're connecting to. So that's why this video today is so important, because our galactic roots are actually being planted in the earth, because the earth is in a way a mirror, a reflection of a particular template that we are embodying, that we're witnessing and harnessing right now at this time of our planetary ascension. As I always say, it's simultaneous and it's parallel with our own personal ascension experience, while at the same time we're harnessing a greater potential as the greater group collective of soul being, which is what the message and the mission of today's video is all about. So what does it mean to integrate the galactic and earth family as in one from the perspective of unity consciousness, and what are some of the issues that a lot of people on this path towards self-mastery, towards self-attainment, starborn people, starseed people are experiencing, especially in relation to the integration of their families, the integration of challenges that are coming from that perspective, and how, in a way, if we're enlarging that perspective, this fits into a bigger picture of what we're doing in our aim, which is a natural evolutionary process towards a greater cosmic ascension. Because in a way, whatever we're experiencing on our individual level is not excluded from the bigger picture, is in no way non-important. So sometimes we think, well, these are just our personal issues and problems. Well, they are a gateway, they're a reflective mirror for something that when we unlock, it's kind of like we open a new doorway and we're finding ourselves at the new level of expanded consciousness. On that level, we're browsing through that room, we're going through that room or that landscape or that shadowscape as well, because we have to integrate all the aspects that kind of belong to that room of initiation. And then when that is complete, suddenly a new doorway pops up there and we're going in again, and then again a new opening. And this is kind of like a layer cake, right? We're going and we're mashing all those different levels, and when we're unleashing this creative potential that comes with the broadening of the whole picture as we're going through that entire room, what comes with that is we can walk through a new gateway, we can walk towards greater self-realization if that kind of hasn't been completed and synthesized. So this, what we're going to be talking about today, is in a way what a lot of people who are on this ascension path, especially, like I said, a lot of starseed people now, they're dealing with, because it's kind of like what is a part of this cosmic completion on this certain concurrent level. Okay, so we're going to get to the bottom of what this is about, but I wanted to give you a little bit of the presentation, because I always tell you that you can't walk into a new gateway and it won't even be presented to you as a point of that focal initiation if what needs to be attained from the entire perspectiveness, you know, the entire perspective of this room that you're currently exploring, which represents a current level of your awareness and mastery, then you can move into a new expanded perception and initiation, because you haven't completed the journey. You haven't really walked through the entire room by gaining the perspective of the whole. So how does this come reflected through the many issues that people are experiencing within their families? It's not always the family in terms of your parents or your siblings. Sometimes it's an extended family, because a lot of people will experience the relationship dynamics not perhaps so intensely within their bloodline family. Sometimes it will be, sometimes within a particular group they're more associated with. It doesn't really matter to that extent. It's more of what's being played out in the dynamic. So where the issues are coming from, with a lot of people, maybe it will be more on the basis of love relationships, intimate relationships, in either way. But what is the topic today is mostly related to the root of the family, because as you know, what we experience as family here on Earth, in a way, overextends at the bigger picture to the roots of what we can call the galactic family or our light family. A lot of people will call that the star family. We all experience, there will be different levels of what we perceive as family. Therefore, our values as what we relate as family will be different, because it depends where our individual aspect of perception, our individual soul, feels in relation to the whole, as where it is in its current state of evolution. Therefore, a lot of people are so deeply attached to only their family and familiar issues that they're experiencing there, they can't have a bigger perspective on the cosmic picture, because they're simply not there yet. They're simply not at the level when they can allow that bigger perspective to come into their lives, what they can be expanded into naturally. So it's an organic process. And in a way, our personal, like I said, challenges, issues will be reflected within the bigger whole. It's also for those beings who are, as I like to specify, volunteer souls, even though that perhaps will not be a platform for your personal dynamics, you still sometimes, in a lot of cases, you take on a template for which you help to release that energy. Because if you're meant to have a guiding experience for others, you're going to have to experience it on the individual level as well, because you can't be a system for that higher spirit guidance unless you've actually walked through the gateway of physical experience. And it is connected to the wisdom that's gained on Earth. So this also relates to cosmic, this bigger galactic perspective being lived through an earthly integrated wisdom, okay? Because I drew here this image, I don't know if you can see it because it's pretty tiny, but imagine a sphere, a circle within which you have a tree of life. So a tree goes from its branches to the core, and then it extends into the roots. So the thing is that cosmic light, if we can't find a way through that core, through that pillar, through what is the main synthesis activation point, it can't really move through and go into the roots, which means we haven't applied integration. It won't circle back up and expand the perspective that's more, you know, broadened. It's more that higher spiritual soul component. So whatever you plant, right, from the experience of the cosmic roots, which are the branches, right, it's kind of like a reversal, but they're still roots. It's just the cosmic roots. Then it goes and plants the seeds into the soil of what we would say a physical experience. And if that doesn't reach the fullness of potential lived here in the physical, that balance can be reached. So at the point of balance, that kind of intersects, and those roots that were once these cosmic roots, right, which we now call, from our downward perspective, we say, well, these are actually branches when we're looking up. But the tree of life is actually a complete balance. It is a symbol, it's divine archetype or a divine truth that shows you that this cosmic has to precipitate into what we would say the dynamics of our physical experience. So then it kind of superimposes upon that, it integrates, and at the point of integration, there's an interlocking, and that sort of releases a new spiritual potency, a new energy, which you would say, wow, I'm my descended ascension, that cycle is complete. And then it precipitates and it goes back upwards. It feeds into the whole again. And once again, from that broader perspective, which would now be a wider circle, because your soul has expanded to this wider circle, it goes back and it creates another experience and another level. Again, it goes into the root. So in this perspective, that's the main image that Spirit showed me for the integration of galactic and earth family as one. So I'm going to talk about healing the core wound, because the core wound has to do with the fact of feeling a sense of separation from our home and what the home truly is. We always connect the home when we still don't have that integration point, right? The cosmic roots, earthly roots as one. So that in that sense, there's an approach or a perspective of duality that still lives within us. So that seed of light, which is the seed of life, basically, and I have the Tantrika beings and the Seed of Life mini audiobook, which presents you with this information, how life was seeded, how you were seeded, and how these sacred beings, and in many cases, we call them the Holy Elohim, which supersede that life into being. And basically that is what we would say, well, that's our bigger cosmic family. That's what seeded the light of DNA, so that the human race, which was seeded through these holy beings, could become a race of divine beings. It was always meant to be a race that fully lives a divine potential within a human template, within its cosmic anatomy even, right? That can translate light in such an illumined way. So this will be about illumination through that experience of family. So when the souls have been traveling these different cycles of incarnation, of experience, and in many cases it became what we know as incarnation became reincarnation. And there's a difference between incarnation and reincarnation, because a reincarnation literally means a cycle of returning, a patterning. It's constant returning to something that you have a constant feeling it hasn't been complete. So it's a lot of, in many cases, there is a sense of repetition. So souls sometimes become so entrenched in these cycles of repetition, they can move into that larger circle, which expands, and it's kind of like an overlay of template, which comes from the experience once lived, integrated, it expands, and this is how natural soul evolution goes. Unless there is a sort of blockage and resistance or separation from source built in the experience, which in a way we can call a fall from grace. And this is what it means. The fall from grace does not mean that we're bad and we're ugly and we're not of source and we're sinners. It simply means there was a point of disconnect which created an experience of being just here, just down, forgetting our true source and the roots. What was really the seeding of life, who we are at our very core, and then starting to ascend back into that greater and greater completion point, right? The circle, the sphere of spirit keeps expanding. So there's a natural progression and evolution. So at the point of that restriction or some sort of rejection that was built in, and in many cases this was also built into the matrix system of our planet, so that the souls would continue to forget, so that the souls couldn't evolve, right? So in many cases this became so inorganic that a lot of souls began to forget who they truly are. They stopped trusting themselves in a natural way. And since that lack of trust was built, and it was actually taken on, because they've taken on the perspective of this it's kind of like an inception in the matrix that's built in, and because it was so innately done by those who could program into the living structure within this planet, but it was the imprint of duality, that this replay could be a constant, so there could be an experience of something, unless you evolve, unless you really evolve into your divine discernment. So in that case, there has to be a breaking point from that experience. And that experience has helped so many souls in duality that they were unable to ascend further and beyond. And an experience of reincarnation just became natural acceptance. Well, we are here and we constantly reincarnate, because the souls forgot that there is a greater sense of completion that is a constant expansion. So they just keep on returning, and it's the wheel of reincarnation that binds an individual through a lack of perception of the bigger whole and what we know as separation and forgetting of our home and the true origin, the true home is the seed of light. So in that state of evolution, that circle of evolution, and go back to my video on the Atlantean experiment and the project of illumination, because that's my mission, is to be an illumined one and to share the truth of illumination and what gets you out of the cycle of this reincarnation and separation that you somehow you feel within your soul you need to complete. And before you complete it, there will be programs, there will be templates you need to master and activate your discernment so you can move through that, because there's a lot of covering up the many areas that sometimes there we have these blind spots we can't see. Okay, so what takes place is that those souls then had to relive the experiences until at one level, at one point they could come into that which I call the illumined union. So that illumined union is the return to your natural organic seed of life, that divine illumination potential within you and your expansion into that. Until then, you're almost like existing at this hazy, you have life, you have embodiments, you can be a very beautiful soul, but there's still aspects like coatings around you that you can't really fully see the truth and all aspects of life in illumination. So there will be these shadow points that we need to integrate, and for that there's a divine intervention that we're given these sacred relationships. And we don't see every relationship as a sacred because we say, well, that person does not, they don't represent that, or they cannot identify with that, which I would say is sacred. So we kind of say, well, those are good relationships and those are bad relationships, and I feel good with these people, I feel bad with those people. So we can see a bigger perspective from the illumined point that every relationship is a mirror and is a gateway back home. So in a way, what was created in this new age system was that there was this inception of, well, certain souls are ascending, leaving other souls behind, where that was never the case. Your ascension is always your unique journey. It's not even, a part of the collective group, unless it's a natural evolutionary progress that, there's a clustering that's coming together that's natural. It's like what comes and migrates together just simply does, and it's natural. So in that sense, that being artificially superimposed upon us, there was an inception, well, a lot of souls were not yet developed at this unity that's complete union of integrated polarity. They started creating more duality by saying, well, this is us versus them, and these people are unenlightened and we're enlightened. The thing is, when you are truly enlightened, right, I would say enlightened, right, because you're in the light of completion. So people talk about enlightenment. You're not even enlightened. You don't say things like that. It's not in question. So we're going to talk about the healing of that core wound, which is we're not home here. These earthly people, that's not our real family. And I don't want to have anything to do with my family or my physical family. It doesn't have anything to do with me. Well, this again creates so much ignorance of why we're really here. Why do we have to integrate as souls, and why do these relationships keep coming back into our life? Because there is a difference of a natural kind of flow when things naturally separate, because they're no longer at the vibrational level of coming together, so they're simply kind of moving further apart, and yet they're still in union, because at the root, like I said, galactic human family is one. Okay, there has always been this union, because the seed of light, the seed of life, is implanted in all life, in all of humanity. So wherever there's individual souls and their own undertaking, their own position in their evolutionary journey, if that doesn't relate somehow to you, or it doesn't resonate with where you are, there still has to be an illumined perspective of union here, because union is who you are. Union is at your core. And when you're fully illumined, you don't get to have that us versus them. Us who are so ascended and we're so enlightened, and them who are not. So, we leave them in the dirt. It's still not even the same as beings who, at the counterpart of this experience, because it does tend to get polarized, right? It has a tendency to have one extreme versus the other extreme. At the other extreme, there's people who want to deliberately and very intentionally their family members or their close people around in their circles up, and they want to show them their perspective. And what they're doing is they're not respecting where they are. They're not respecting the natural evolution of those beings, of those individual souls who are simply, they're having their own experience too, just how you are. Whether it is enlightened or unenlightened from your perspective, it doesn't matter, because it is just your perspective. If you are fully illumined, when you are an illumined being, you don't get to be the judge. You don't do like this being is unified, that being is not. And I see a lot of people doing that. They feel they have the right to somehow accept people and the realities of these people, and labeling them. It doesn't have to be very conscious. It can be a shadow belief that's so deeply hidden within you can't even see. And then these people who would tend to kind of always represent the opposite energy to you would somehow get very agitated, very annoyed by them, and simply feel that resistance and say, oh, I can't stand these people. They're so unenlightened, or I can't stand this. It's so not in the path of ascension. And what this creates is a lack of recognition of what work you're here to do, because I see so many people failing to see that everything is kind of like standing there in their faces to confront with, because I've met so many people who complain about their relationships instead of seeing why the other person is there. How can they integrate their ascension in the physical? Because ascension is not a mental state of being. If you can't practice this, what you preach or you believe or you've expanded inwardly, you can't bring it into your embodiment so you can be a conscious conduit of light. No matter who you connect to, it will be different levels, of course, because yes, there are people who are completely in sleeping mode, some are completely in the dark, and then there's people who are very expanded. And yet how we approach things should always come from our union state, not in a way, getting into where they are and feeling, from our perspective where they are. So this feeling of, the core wound in many cases has come because there was first and foremost a forgetfulness of who we are. What is the cosmic family, right? And then we started to, because those roots were somehow in the shadow, there was veils and souls couldn't really see. What they've created instead is a codependent relationships with many of their families, trying to make them their source. Okay, you are my mother, you are my father, this is how you're supposed to act because you represent that which is maternal or paternal energy. That energy, when you are truly a master of yourself, of your sovereign domain, should always come from within you, because you are your cosmic parent. That essence lives within you as a divine trinity of a fully illumined being. You represent all of that. And those two basic energies create that which is the quantum level, that divine child, that the fool, right, in tarot, which is the magic child within you, that is the birthing of that relationship being balanced. So that, when it's truly owned, has to come from you. And whenever you're still noticing stories you're telling yourself about your family, how they are, how they're not respecting you, not valuing you, not seeing you for who you are, you're not seeing that you're becoming so attached to these stories for a reason, because it's trying to show you something. So I want to start by saying that recently there has been so much, because I do daily readings to kind of see what messages are coming through, and I don't always share all of them. Some of them I do, but a lot of them are contemplative in nature. And recently, so much of the Six of Cups has been coming up, and that is the card or the message, the archetype of that innocent union, that childlike union, and that reunion to those energies of, when you're a child. If you have family issues in any way, ask yourself, how did you feel towards your family when you were a child? It's like you remember you loved them either way because you were innocent. All those beliefs were not superimposed upon you yet. So you were loving like a child loves. It was unconditional, right? The child reflects at that stage the mother's love that's unconditional, if that is in that way. It's not always here on earth, but at the very core, there remains this essence of birthing that is completely unconditional, and the child responds to that. And at that level, there is complete union, which is innocent and pure. That is not yet the level of our development that went through many stages of life's journey. So it is completely naive and innocent. So it loves even when you're not loved back. you still love. You know, it's like a dog loves in that kind of way. It's like an animal can often show you. If a human being does not show you that, sometimes is a mirror. But in that sense, there is a longing at this point to return to that state, which means reaching that union even after we gain so much knowledge, we've gained so much perspective. But now this perspective, this knowledge, everything we've been gathering has to illuminate itself, which means if you truly are now the child, the innocent, has gone through many different stages until the true illumination through that cosmic wisdom is born. You will have those recurring experiences or recurring energies that are pulling you towards something. And a lot of people are now experiencing this because that is a pivot point of our ascension. A lot of people think that ascension will be you're just moving up, 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 and it will all be beautiful and dandy. No, again, remember back this picture here, the cosmic tree of life, where this precipitation of light has to reach actually the lowest point of the root. You know, the trees are an amazing conduit for light that gathers so much light, and then through the core, through the roots, they're bringing it into the planet, to the soil, so that can come, you know, back up and start producing life and hold the nurturing substance for so many life forms. So in the way, you as an organic being has the same role here. You are to be, when you are a fully illumined human, a conduit for the galactic consciousness, for that which we would reference as cosmic, as Christ consciousness of unity, then coming back and coming and really reaching the very depths of Earth. And now Jupiter being in Scorpio, and I think the Six of Cups is related to the Sun in Scorpio, that does give us this whole year of in retrospect moving through those energies, because this is in the deepest sense of reunion. The deepest integration work is about that. I know a lot of people would say reunion is about twin souls coming together. No, true reunion is not just you or you as another aspect of your soul coming together as counterparts. The cosmos is vast, and reunion or union as you know it, and the lumen union includes many other levels as well, because it all starts to expand from that vantage point when you reach that inner polarity integration, which is the twin soul within you. Then reunion at the physical, our reality experience, is when you can reunite with any aspect, when you can live your reunion no matter what you feel as a coming, confronting, or even opposing energy, because there is no more position existing within you. So that's the core of what is here. So what is light family truly? We often look up to the skies, or, you know, we meditate and we say, please, cosmic family, my true light family, show me the way, because my earthly family does not understand me. And in a lot of cases, we become so dependent upon this higher light that we, a lot of times, and a lot of people start neglecting their earthly lives. They start neglecting their physicality, maybe their friends, their families, whatever. This is not about people pleasing. This is not about you needing to be everywhere for everyone. But at the same way, you were not built here as an antenna of light to constantly look up, look up, look up to this, what you would call a cosmic family. But what is your sacred task and mission and devotion is that this seed of light, which is this, wait a minute, is this greater galactic pulse of life that is always in constant communion with you, with all of us who are open, who are aware, who are self-aware of our source. We have, in a way, a responsibility to bring that back down, which means addressing everything as a part of our earthly experience, our body. You know, what is family? So this means that the seed of light can have proper substance, that it can grow and mature in our earthly form, which means you're becoming a spiritual adult. You're becoming a master. And when you are approaching people, relationships, or relationships dynamics from a master point perspective, and I made a video, I think a year back, something like that, about empathy. So everyone's now claiming they're an empath, towards cosmic empathy. So this galactic empath, which is an empath that feels within many levels. Not just, oh, I'm feeling the other person, I'm feeling this, okay, in relation to me, that I assume would be this and that. When you come from the perspective of mastery, and that's the difference, in many cases, why people have family issues and they feel unseen, unrecognized, unloved, there's a sense of sometimes unrequited love that's been going on for eons of that cycle from the original fall of grace. So what is happening in truth behind this is that we don't always see this mirror. And where is it coming from? Where, if we go back and trace it to the galactic roots, where there was a sense of severing those roots. So now we constantly seeking it somewhere, but we can't get it there. So there's a feeling of this constant, you know, recycling. So this unholiness, right, which is the birthing of feeling not whole, constantly needs to reattach itself to something, and it does so through this relationship energy. And it's not that purity of what a sacred relationship at its illumined way truly is about. So all relationships are sacred, but they're not all illumined, because illumination comes from you. And when there's two that can hold that state of illumination coming together, they would birth a lumen union. But that union, you know, you can't do that unless that lumen union is born within you as a state of consciousness. And that is why I always tell you, people say, well, energies don't want, or, you know, twin souls coming together, whatever. And the thing is, it's not about that. It's about whether you can hold that state of consciousness within you. You can meet the other person, but can you be with them within an illumined union? Well, no. If you haven't really embodied what a light quotient of illumined union truly is, and that absolute divine benevolence and neutrality. Okay, so from a point of empathy, people who are can be more advanced souls, but they're going to experience themselves as an empath in so many of these cycles. They will feel the feelings of others, but from a point of being a master empath, or a master of, in that sense, it's not even the word empathy. It's just pure compassion. It's pure higher understanding of your illumination, because a master no longer feels just the other person and feeling you, and then, you know, that point, the space between you and another, when there cannot yet be full illumination attained, you're still going to make a few assumptions of what they're feeling. But you're going to stand from your own perspective. And from your perspective, from your vantage point, you would say, wow, I'm feeling they're feeling this, and I'm an empath, so I can feel this. There's one state. A master of pure illumined compassion can be anything at any time, at any level of consciousness, because it transcends this, the binding nature of seeing even one's slightest sense of duality, because duality will give an impression of things moving apart, you know, or too much closer together. It's not that perfection of a Vesica Pisces state, when it's an interaction that is harmonious and in total divine equilibrium. In that state, there is always a constant state of relating to one another instead of being unified with the other. And that relation energy births a sense of me versus them, us versus them, you know, from the deepest personal level to, you know, overview of, wow, earthly, galactic, you know, star family. That is a concept that, in truth, it was always meant to be an embodied state of consciousness for us as awakened, illumined individuals, which means the cosmic master. So the master of your experience, because you have birthed enough light quotient within you, you can now exist in this inner union, an illumined union. You can feel anyone what they're feeling, but not from where you're standing, from your vantage point, but it's almost like as if you were them. That's the difference between a relationship and a union. And in that state, you're going to feel what they feel simply as a neutral point. They feel what they feel, period, because you're going to see it from their consciousness. You're going to see it how they see it. You know, so that's the angelic gift of seeing with the eyes of an angel, which means that perspective, which is the soul-based consciousness, is not, I feel you, you know, that's the empath. I feel your feelings, I still feel them, but I feel them from the relation of where I'm standing from. So I'm going to translate it, I'm going to assume it through my consciousness. There's still going to be a sense of duality. Okay, so what has been happening in many cases, in many families, that in a way we're starting to get a little torn apart, and that's not just for one individual or two or three. That's happening on our planet at the mainstream for so many people, because it's, I think it's what people complain most about is, why doesn't my family understand me? Why can't they see how I am? You know, why do they have this constant push and pull? The thing is that push and pull, you're helping to co-create. It's not a passive thing where they, because they're so unenlightened, are doing it upon you, and you're so unenlightened, so why is it being done to you? A master of self, an illumined master, does not think of things in that way. So being in union with all life, means seeing it as if that aspect sees an experience. Okay, I'm going to give you one example. mm, how to give that example? On Earth, a lot of people who are not fully awakened, and they're still participating in this constant fueling and refueling of energy through the matrix, and they feel they need to work, have these habits, have that kind of relationship. In a lot of cases, people based only on living in the third dimension, they relate to other people. Their sense of relationship is through something that brings them a sense of togetherness. And because they themselves are not in a state of union, they don't know that a union is a sense that naturally pulls and keeps things together without you needing something to be and act as a glue. So in many cases, people formulate relationships through something that bonds them together, through an activity, something that connects them, that gives them a sense of connection. That's why in the third dimensional perspective only, people always look for something that will give them a sense of connection. Sometimes that can also be dysfunctional, and people will take things like drugs and, recreational medicine, things like that. Even sexuality is being abused in this way to gain a momentarily sense of connection. It's not that fully unified illumined union. So what occurs is that when these souls who are starting to advance and progress towards their ascended self are kind of pulling their life force in that direction, these people, the family aspect, that which stays unawakened because it chooses so, not because they've done something wrong, but simply because it's their soul perspective, it's where they are, they will have a sense of, wow, something is being taken from there because that activity is no longer as strong. Let's say you have family members that want to go out and party or drink, whatever they're doing. You suddenly no longer want to do that. You are now interested in tarot cards and, socializing in a different way. You want to do readings, you want to go do yoga, whatever. It doesn't matter. Or you're finding a group of people that somehow connects you, or you're changing. And they're perceiving that change as wrong and bad, and they're starting to worry about you. So from your perspective, you would say, wow, they're wrong because they don't see how I'm moving towards the light. One aspect, like I said before, one extreme is trying to wake them up too. The other one is trying to run away. The third and the polarity integrated way is simply seeing things as they are and acknowledging internally what is truly happening from the higher perspective, which means seeing all souls involved and where they are and seeing the perfection in that. And simply being neutral because life force is neutral. That's that divine neutrality, which is not the same as being detached. Because a person that says, I'm totally detached from life, cannot feel their life force in the body, so they cannot empathize, they cannot feel compassion for other beings. And I've met people and I've even had physical experience when another would simply push you away without any sense of compassion because they have withdrew from the level of feeling that actually makes us these divine human beings that were always meant to ascend through our higher feeling, the higher heart nature. So in that extreme, they disconnect because the disconnect feels easier, it feels more comfortable, and they don't have to deal with feelings. When you face the feelings and you go through the emotions, you go through the process and you integrate, at a certain point of that integration, you will reach a level where, well, even that state will no longer be that which fuels your next level of mastery, which means you can, there's people who won't integrate the shadow, and there's people who are sometimes too overly obsessive with the shadow. You see, there's all these possibilities. And at the end, you have to find a point of balance, which is that point of divine neutrality, which is when you're not browsing is like, I need to integrate this, what more can I see to get there, to be better, because we're not here to get there or get better, get more evolved. Evolution is a natural state, it occurs as a certain amount of light quotient is gathered. There's a sense of progression to the next level. I've given you this example at the entry point of this video, how you walk through that room, you integrate, you move into the next level. So there is a sense of not pushing, not yourself, not the other. But a lot of times there needs to be this healing, this resolution that on Earth, yes, we all need family. That's what connects us to the root of the Earth. If you are a space being who's here on a mission that maybe lasts 5 days and you're here to, I don't know, get some energetic samples and move back up, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to connect in such a way. But as long as you have a mission here and your mission does, travels through waves of reverberation of vibrational work, you will have to get involved with people. And our families are the biggest point of practicing mastery, and that inclusiveness instead of exclusiveness. And we're going to talk also today about the spiritual elitism here, because there's a lot of people who do not want to incorporate that which they would say, "Ooh, that's not enlightened," because the enlightened perspective of illumined master doesn't say enlightened, non enlightened, awake, non awake. It just sees everything as levels of consciousness, and it simply acknowledges, and lives their own. So it doesn't mean you have to let things in and become a part of your reality and your experience, but you have to acknowledge them. And a lot of these families, earth families for many star-seeded beings, have not gotten the proper acknowledgement for where they are because there was in birthing sense of judgment towards them. And sometimes it's very covert, it's very hidden. And recently I've heard a woman talking about this in a video that she had a counseling session with someone who has really judged their mother because there was a disconnect from the father, and mother was apparently to blame because she was too perfectionistic, and the father left. So there was this feeling of mother's unawake, doesn't want to progress, I'm awake, I'm better. But it was very hidden, and the person was not yet able to see and acknowledge that, instead of seeing, wow, that's the best she could do in that moment. So I gave you one example before, that when you see how these people who are so in the third dimensional structure only, they're not yet able to wake up. And sometimes if that awakening was too rash and too quick for them, imagine all their lives would be suddenly taken away, and they can't integrate that fast because their soul is not yet developed. If you take away their sense of what binds them to this physical world, which is their rituals, what you wouldn't say call a ritual, but it's what they enjoy doing. For some, even partying will be a ritual. That's how they lash off and release steam for them at this moment. And when you see it, why they're doing it, and from this greater perspective, I've given you a few months back an example of people who smoke and how sometimes that's how they're processing energy because they're unable to consciously do so. When you have a compassion, when you feel as how they feel without your biased opinion, that's when you can move into your master self, as the way master sees everything as neutral. Everything simply is, and it's evolving in its own pace. So the integration of the family aspect of our earth family doesn't just mean your family, but everyone you would know on earth that still says, wow, there's nothing else, but there's just this third dimension and it's how they live. Can we love? Can we be in the compassion of the state that what they know as reality simply exists as reality for them? Source is so divinely intelligent and loving that this free will experience would not say, now there's so many ascending souls and they want this reality on the planet, but because they're so more highly advanced, we're going to take away the matrix reality because so many people have gotten too overly accustomed to it, and we're just going to take it away overnight. Can you imagine the stress and the fear coming and the sudden awakening that the souls, they can't handle it. The souls that can wake up overnight and can suddenly change their lives completely is because these souls are advanced. They've just been progressing. What they're experiencing through their awakening is just a culmination, and everything lines up together. It's all been done. The work has been done. It's just, it's an opening, and it's a walking through the gateway. But these souls would have to do so much in such a short time and adaptation, and they're not used to it. They haven't yet done the work as a soul. So can we allow them? Can we allow them this experience without getting too much involved from our, it's like, hot-tempered state of how we feel rejected by these ways of living, or how we're being accepted or not accepted. It doesn't matter. So that reunion, that feeling that we're walking through, it's the entire year through this Jupiter, because Jupiter does denote our expansion, and Scorpio is this depth, and it can be painful sometimes, this pointy pinching that is this poison, but the poison that's for good, because it will cause up many toxins in your body to come up, and that's been toxic behaviors and things that we haven't yet fully addressed. So now I want to talk about, so that you'll get what I'm trying to say here from the perspective of union and unity, so that we can move further in how to integrate this, as in seeing the light family and earth family is one. Because remember, the more you go into the earth integration, the more knowledge will be given to you. That's the reciprocity fact here. That's the divine compensation law. So all those of you who have been integrating in the physical, you're getting more insight, you're getting more expanded in your consciousness, you're reaching greater potentials for your mastery, not just what you've known as the basic spirituality. And we've talked about that in the mission of volunteer souls and star seeds and so on. So that means that that which is given to you for a reason, that you can anchor and embody it, and then bring it back, reach a greater level, greater depth, and then again move back down. That's the constant ascension and descension, which is how life perpetuates itself. It's constantly propelling itself to a new and next level of advancement in its consciousness evolution. So we have to get to the root of what does it mean, the essence, the core level work of working with the energies, so that we can really witness that integration from the core, is seeing first where we have gone astray from a sense of constantly creating the separation. We say love versus hate, anger versus tolerance, I don't know, things like that. But we've seen them as these, right? There's two energies, and you would say this bubble versus that bubble. This is love versus hate, or fear versus love. We say this is that versus that, and that leads and anchors us into duality. What in truth, and I've been sharing about this just recently, what in truth is happening is there's always the seed of life. What is the seed of life? These are divine essences that have been put into the human genome as in our light DNA, that would preserve us in a way to fulfill our divine destiny as a light being in the physical, to bring forth a race of beings that is divinely intelligent and is able to maintain source energy in their physical vessels. That was always the intention of the Illumin project. But in that sense, the core is always in its essence state. So the essence, let's say, would be always love. Or I've given you previously this example of respect. So that essence of beautiful divine respect, which is, of course, divine integrity. And when we start to sugarcoat it, and then we bring all those levels and layers of density and distortion with that fall of grace, right, with forgetting who we truly are, we distort it to the degree that at this external level, this divine respect and integrity becomes this feeling of humiliation. And this was one example. So at the core of that, which we say is love, then so many things come here, right? So many densities, so many levels. Oh, God knows what all we make up. So what we've been saying so far is, okay, we either exist in this or in that state, right? But in truth, the core, the essence has always been, and that's where a lot of people are missing the point of integrating the polarity. And my knowledge here is the sacred tantrika being, which is this integrated polarity being that seeds life in creation and helps it to evolve to the next level, is I'm giving you this as the key awareness that has always been living within you. It's not something coming from the outside, because through the seed of life, it was planted within you as a human being and within the whole. So go to my audiobooks, mini audiobooks section. There is this recording of the Tantrika and the Seed of Life and other MP3s that are basically a lot about remembering the divine law, the natural law of how life truly is in its purest essence level. So this is the unity consciousness, sees the main essence and then a lot of the fragmented aspects that the further out we move in creation, we can develop. But when we talk about these as in this versus that energy, I'm angry or I'm like this. No, the anger has also in its root pure love. But because we somehow are living the vibrational experience of it that's distorted, we can't move past it. And we can't really integrate it through the polarization and bring it. You see, there's a sense of division here between these two aspects. So from a perspective of unity, those two, you try to unify them. So if you say, okay, I represent this enlightened aspect and my family represents this unenlightened aspect, what you really have to do is bring it together. Okay, so I want to also say that within that video I watched, there was a sense of that a lot of people are being blocked because they're not doing this integration work at the family level. But it's beyond just the family, like your siblings and your parents, or extended family maybe too. But this is more about us as in relation to Earth, because a lot of people have said Earth is not home. From that perspective of all life is cosmic, all life begins at the source level, it's not home, but the perspective of creation. All home worlds are worlds, therefore they are the experience type level home. But the home, why those who are advanced souls, or especially volunteer souls, why we didn't feel it as home is because we felt the potential for home, how it can truly be, as it is in the higher realms perhaps, or the worlds that have already ascended and that have moved past this stage of duality. So we remember the potential and we say, well, this is not a home because it doesn't feel complete. But that's why we're here, because we're helping this completion stage to come about. So in this video sharing, there was this initiative for people to start, you know, kind of like making amends with their families, sometimes even apologizing. But remember, no one can tell you what you need to do as a part of your inward ways. This is an awakening master who you are. You have to find your own way, because no guru, teacher, master can give you the kind of wisdom that will anchor you into your life, into your own descended experience of your ascension, which means embodied, which means fully lived. So you have to find your own way of peaceful resolution, and that which in many cases we call mediation energy, which means being and explaining yourself, or apologizing, or simply finding that space of forgiveness without the need to be apologetic, which is something different. Saying, oh, now I need to do this. And when you will say that to yourself at the master level, you will instantly feel resistance, because you know the master level never says, I need to do this so I can advance. No, it has to be an organic birthing. If you're not ready, then it's just forced. It's coming from the outside levels, which means there perhaps still needs to be more light quotient experience and coming into your being, so that you'll go like, oh yeah, of course, I know exactly what to do. And that is why I always tell people, allow so much light to come to you. And this is what we do through the vibrational light quotient increase. And we do that through the sacred life force work. There is a tantrical life force mastery course I have, so you can increase your light quotient and the understanding. That leads us into the Galactic Human Embodiment, which was the 11th initiation course. Now the 12th one will be this Cosmic Union and Consciousness of Ascension. So when you do that, and left light quotient suddenly and eventually comes, that your knowing of what to do will be natural. And at that instance, it will no longer be felt as, I need to do that to shift the energy. I need to do this. Sometimes the withdrawal period was needed, was necessary, so you could work on yourself, develop yourself to the degree that now you can see all from the level of mastery, instead of that empath, that, you know, people who say they're empaths, well, that's a part of the experience. When souls are evolving, they're becoming more compassionate, but they're not perhaps yet the universal compassion level, which is seeing all as it is neutrally, and mutually benefit for everything and all. It's just simply as it is. It's just acknowledgement, and it's that playful innocence that returns with that. So there was also a fear of walking into relationships, because that sense of innocence was lost, and that way people were more choosing to withdraw and move away. But in a way of reintegrating the energy is finding a balanced point that leaves a space open for these energies if they're ready to come to you as well, because you can't force anyone. But there always needs to be a space open instead of doors closed, because that's what a true master does. We are vibrationally aligned with what we are. But imagine something that does its integration work and returns to you and comes back to you. Would you deny that and say, no, you did this to me, you did that to me, you can't go back in my life, I don't want you? It's not about coming back into your life, but that energy is obviously there showing you something, and perhaps it needs something for you. Maybe it needs a piece of wisdom that you've integrated to get to where you are, and we are here to share, because love always shares itself. You don't have to now be friends with everyone. Doesn't mean that. It just means you leave an open space, because you're an open vessel. You are a vessel for true universal divine love, which is the place of unity, not that versus that energy versus that energy. At the essence level, there is always the essences that are primary divine essences are at the source level of purity. And what was developed around them was the part of the human experiencing. And now it's time for those of you who are walking the gateway of your Lumen Union to unify that, so you can find a space of, you know, being in union with others instead of relating to them from what you perceive as right? Okay, so how to do this work via mirroring relationship energy, in most cases family, so that non-owned aspects of self can return, because that wounded child, in many cases, that was rejecting that because there was an instant recognition of something being in opposition to you or rejecting you. There was an instant repelling energy as the confirmation of that duality, where within you there's no more template of duality. There is no longer a reaction that in your physical world would constantly confirm that as yes, you know, it is duality, go back, do this, go away, because there's nothing more that will reaffirm that program, because you've unified. Okay, so until that is a program of this duality, this versus that, that energy versus that energy. At the bigger level, you might say that me versus them. And that means you've owned now this mastery. So a lot of people who have been constantly digging deep into saying, my wounded child, the healing of the core wound, when it's complete, you don't have to relate to your child as the wounded anymore. In that case, it becomes a magical, miraculous child, the divine child within you that is the creative potentiality that brings energy and experiences life in the physical through bliss, which is that compassionate state of recognizing the bliss, how everyone lives. So let me give you one example. If I'm in this high space of awareness of unity, and I meet with people who are maybe sometimes even very dualistic, sometimes they're very or sometimes people who are very closed off, I wouldn't talk to these people about things like that. I don't talk to these people about ascension, but I don't negate them. I still acknowledge them. I acknowledge their presence. I don't try to ignore them like they're not even there. I simply say, I'm in my vibrational alignment, but I acknowledge them. They're a part of life. So I would give you a way how to help you integrate is sometimes do it through humor and through this playful, because that's this reunion. That's what the message spirit is showing us, is that it's time to be playful, not being so serious. Oh, but this is how these people are. Oh, this is what they do. Can you be as this magical child, because your luminescent self is childlike, is pure, but it's also wise, and that's the difference. But when you began, there was just innocence and purity, and now through this evolutionary state, this development you've maintained and preserved within you, comes a sense of completion. And at this point, you can be childlike with anything and with anyone. You don't have to say, no, this is my best friend, but you can engage it. If someone wants to engage your conversation, you can feel where energy pulls, and you can talk about simple things. You can tell a joke, whatever, and your innocence will be a natural shield of, perhaps you say, these energies are dark and they want to harm me. In a way, you don't see it like that. You simply see it as an energy experience that has its own journey. And you will see things that, when you are unified, things that are not a sense of belonging space to you. Of course, if you're a volunteer soul, these energies will come to you because they're coming to you for assistance. And that's the difference. When you're still working on your own mastery, you will see these energies will start to dissolve, because you're no longer in duality that would need a constant sense of reaffirmation. Yes, yes, yes. This is like confirming duality. You see how they are? You see? Because this duality program needs to reprogram itself. I have to tell you, the basic secret of life that all masters have been teaching is Source is pure consciousness. That's why the only program of Source is truth. If you imagine, recently Spirit gave me this funny image, it's very humorous, is imagine Source like a giant supercomputer that has only one program that keeps on running, and that program is like, unconscious, 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 and it goes like this. And because life continuously, that program, right, continuously affirms that it's conscious, and that's the deep presence we can feel when we are in the Source consciousness. It creates life, because that consciousness creates life. So life is in constant existence, evolution, and preservation. Without that, we become unconscious. And because of that, we need a sense of being alive. And that's why people use these activity-based modalities and things they need to relate to. Somehow they can feel alive. And when you take that away from them, they feel, well, you don't take it. You just take your energy. You own your energy. You take it with you. So perhaps these people will feel, wow, you've taken away, or I've lost my, I don't know, my daughter. I've lost my sister. I've lost my brother. They didn't lose it. They lost a sense of identity that you held as a mirror for them. But in a way of integrating that back, you can, again, without needing to be apologetic or helping or, fulfilling what they have as people have as an idea of you, just be truthful in who you are at the core and say, I understand how you feel. Be empathetic in a true sense. Not as an empath that says, I feel, but I'm more developed, so what I feel is more right. No, not perhaps. What everyone feels is valid for them. Whatever level they're feeling, it's valid. It's an experience, and it's their values. So when that sense of identity is kind of taken away, and because they still live through identity, they would identify that as losing you, but they didn't really lose you. So you, as a being of compassionate heart and that integrated being, you would somehow show them you're still there, but not perhaps in a way that they want to, but reaffirm, you know, find a way. You have to find a way of reaffirming that you're still you. At the core, it's always you, you know, and maybe finding something else that connects you. If you feel you want that relationship, in many cases, you just, with your inner unification, you would feel a natural drawing apart, but it will be natural this time. It won't be you running away and not yet fully integrated. You see, that's the difference. So that wounded child, because it was constantly reaffirming the program of duality, now becomes a magical divine child. So this leads to illumined union. And this is the mastery of the child that is pure, innocent, and at the same time wise, right? It's that childlike illumined state that, you know, we all seen with these masters who embodied, like the laughter, the cosmic laughter of Buddha, for instance. So there was a fear, like I said before, of this loss of innocence. And we didn't want to recreate it, so we rather went in hiding. But in a way, that served the mastery of many beings who were developing on their own, so that eventually you could come in this power to be really with yourself, right? Instead of that misused trust, which leads into a lack of discernment. And because of that, people isolated themselves a bit so they could regain that sense of trust. And that's a part of the phase. But remember, when you reach a certain level here, when you go to the roots, you will be always called to go down and now apply it. Source will say, now apply this. Now integrate it. Now show your worth and true divine value in showing up for life. No longer through attachment, no longer through codependency, no longer through continuously reaffirming the program of duality, but through that conscious living expression, showing up for you first. And when you're you, you know, people don't have to relate to you through the eyes they do. If they want to, they still will. You can't change their perception of you. But at the very core, you have shifted. You don't see anymore me versus them. I am who I am. And I don't have to escape it. You are so strong that you will see, you won't get so much penetration of that which wants to change you or somehow provoke you to the level you would give in and say, okay, I don't want to be a part of this path. It's too difficult. So I'll just go back to the old and familiar. We are doing this work of this templating so we can establish this non-codependent, this freely loving, true love for the rest of humanity when each and every one of the family is ready to return to that state of innocence, but that wise, embodied, integrated innocence. At the time being, that process requires us in this development where we don't see our position is better. If you truly are the wiser one, that doesn't mean you will judge the other one, because you will see from a point of wisdom, which is seeing where they are and why they're acting and behaving like they are, because you're going to see at the depth of their soul where they are currently in their evolution. You will see, you know. And I had this experience myself where I was much younger and I had this ex-boyfriend. It was very funny. It was challenging. But when that person returned into my life after 7 years, I went through a beautiful cycle when I really integrated them, because I no longer saw their patterns as in, oh, they're going against me. I simply accepted the person and I was just there, but I was no longer how they wanted me to be with them. I was really myself. And in many cases that confused the person completely. But, you know, I had to show myself. It wasn't about showing them, because they remain where they are. It was about showing myself that I can still be me, not just with those aspects and people who are watching me and knowing, and, you know, those who know what I'm here to do. But even those who perhaps don't know and they have this filtered image of you, and still be as you are, even with them. So that is a point of mastery through which everyone has to go through in a way. I can also give you one example of there's this one beautiful example of the mother who moved higher in consciousness, and her child could not understand. And she even, you know, she relocated, she moved. And the child was so angry, he couldn't let go of that anger. While she was still focusing and mastering her own sense of power, because she before was easily swayed. You know, she was easily swayed into persuasion of what, you know, perceptions are about her, what she's doing wrong. So when she developed properly in her integration, she had a challenge too. She was actually called to write to him and say, look, what I've done before was because I've chosen it. It has nothing to do with you. It's all me, and it was my choice. And I did the best I could in that moment, because she needed to create an opening for her child that if they're willing to shift, she's always going to be there for her, him, you know. It's not a gender, but in that sense, that opening is created. And even if they're still resisting and still persisting in their unforgiveness state, now you've created an opening, and you will see. You can't be attached to the result, but you are doing that integration from a fully illumined place. So there is a sense of integration, which is your inner work, and there will be a reintegration where you're working with the templates of the bigger picture. It's the work of every volunteer soul and every being who's here to do this work of ascension. So I want to talk now about the spiritual elitism, which is the other extreme. If you don't do this integration, this is what it leads to. And again, I've seen a video from this woman talking about this. It was so good, because again, there's these examples of people who start their awakening process and suddenly see themselves as higher or better than other people. And they can get trapped in this mentality, which is a pitfall in truth. It really prevents your soul from moving forward. And I can tell you 2 examples, because I've met so much of this energy in people that it's actually truly sad, because these people, in a way, you can feel they are star seeds. You can feel they have the knowledge. But during their course of earthly embodiments, they've gained something. It's like a little black point that keeps anchoring them. And they can't really understand that they're here, because they always want to go up. Oh, my cosmic family is so much better, and they love me and this, and I can't connect with these people. Why are you here? They never ask themselves this question. And this is why I love the explanation that this woman gave, because she said, we are here to integrate that. And the whole world's reality, and this reality, we're merging that. We're helping to build a platform of connection, because we're bridging the gaps between Earth versus the rest of the cosmos. And we do that through our relationships, so that eventually we could be so open-minded that we can allow all the kind of energies to come here, because otherwise we can't develop and expand further. And we do that first at our intimate relationship level, which reflects our source. Then we have all these experiences of connecting with, opening wider and wider, because the first sense of family, like I said, is your divine trinity within you. Then it's the family circle around you. Then it's the group level. Then, it super extends on many, many levels. But at the core, we are all of this galactic pulse of light. It's what feeds us. It's what sustains us. And when the soul is going through these different templates of creation, the soul will have a feeling of, wow, that's my star family, because the soul perhaps was born into that stellar template or that world of experience, and it was its originating point of birth. So it kind of associates with that. But it's only a particular cycle of the soul, because the soul continues from there on, through developing through many templates of consciousness, eventually leading the soul to become a self-born. And that will be more explained in my Cosmic Union and Ascension video. So just a little hindsight. Preview, sorry, sometimes I mix up the words. But this spiritual elitism of us versus them, I could give you 2 examples of the people I met. In one case, there was this boy who had a very kind of like, he always talked against his mother, how she judges him, how she, he's never the right thing. But at the same time, he was so bound to her, because he was like a mama's boy. He couldn't see it, he was so bound through this relationship. She really deeply impacted his life, what he can and can't do, and her perceptions of him. It's because he didn't liberate himself, and he kind of didn't release her from his judgment of her. He kept recreating the pattern, and that pattern binds you together. So what you get is someone who's really not grown into their full manhood or womanhood. It doesn't matter, because they kind of haven't had that peaceful resolve into seeing and doing the parent integration work. So they become like this, really at the same time so drawn to their mommy, but at the other hand, they're judging her. You see, that's one example, and they're not seeing it. It's like a blind spot is there, because they think they're so enlightened that, and enlightenment does not do that. It acknowledges them. But you are so strong, you can simply live your own experience. And perhaps that person wasn't yet that developed and mature enough so they can live themselves without being impacted by the opinion of others. While simultaneously, they themselves, behind the scenes, perhaps not articulating it in words. But it doesn't matter. You can judge the same in your thoughts, and they might have a silent judgment and a judgment treatment towards their mother or father. It doesn't matter. So that kept recreating the pattern. The other pattern was, I remember a woman specifically, and she was always gossiping about everyone in the spiritual circles. That person was like this, that person was like that. No one was good enough for her. She had such an elitistic view of how she is, how developed she is, but she had a lot of blind spots, again, that she couldn't see. She couldn't she kind of like lacked that empathy towards people, because it was very rigid how she connected with people. It was almost like disconnect. And once she shared with me this experience when a crippled person came, well, disabled person came to her, physically challenged person, and they wanted something from her, she just totally cut them off. And I said, well, why didn't you just at least acknowledge them through love? You don't have to, you know. He's like, no, I don't want that kind of energy in my life. It's bad. I am in my world. I want to deal only with things that interest me. And it's a subtle line, you see. It's a subtle line between thinking you're better than, or simply emanating your higher state of consciousness without feeling you are the top of the world, you're the king of the world. Because to be really the king and queen of hearts means that you feel everyone as they're feeling, and that if you really feel them, you will feel what in that moment they're needing of you, what they're coming for. Okay. I have to tell you, I have even been compassionate towards my stalkers, and I had a few. And I won't really go into the depth of it, but the way I've responded to them, I've kind of given them what they needed in that moment. Even then, because the conscious of the human can go, oh, that's bad, look at them how they are. But on the soul level, this connection, which is without that intermediary, you simply feel what they feel, and you know what they need in the moment. When you give it to them, the energy is gone. And this is that true, the nature of how us as volunteer souls we operate, because we don't judge things. We allow them to come, fulfilling its kind of energetic exchange, and we watch them go, and without any attachment. But we don't cut energies off. We don't cut them at the source, and we're not being elitistic in that way, because again, it perpetuates this pattern of duality, keeps it going. So sometimes you think you're too enlightened for these people, or to even engage in anything. You know, when I go out into the world, and it's not so often, but you go to a store, you go to, you know, when people, I don't know, bring you something, I don't know, you go to a cafe, whatever, I'm always so deeply loving the communication with those people. I'm always engaging them in some kind of humorous talk, and I love doing that because I'm giving them a sense that I acknowledge them, and I'm so thankful they're here, and you know, they're a being. Wow, look, they brought me this. And sometimes they don't want to engage, but in many cases, we've developed a really beautiful communication exchange with those people who are more open, because you have this open heart, and you don't see yourself as, I know so much more than these people. In many cases, yes, you will be guided to pull away, because there are also energies that are harmful, but that's where the discernment comes in. But don't forget, when you're dealing, it's not about dealing with the overall picture, because you're not, no one's here to save the world. This means that the inner integration, so the relationships that are the important ones that come to you for a reason, those are kind of relationships I'm talking about here. And when you're doing the work of your inner realm, you're actually doing it for the whole, at the collective level, and the cosmic family, and they're so proud, and they're saying, bravo, look, these people are getting it. They're getting it, and they're integrating it. So that true integration happens through compassion, a gratitude. Always be thankful for the experience they brought you, even if you thought was the worst you've ever experienced, because sometimes we had to, because we had to see what was still in the hearts of those who feel so separate, so that we can integrate that energy, we can absorb it and let it heal. And volunteer souls do that. We take on templates, we take on imprints, so that we can create a template, a new one, okay, through that compassionate mastering approach. So we don't need to explaining, that's the explaining without explaining, which is just a self-obvious radiance of you, which is a vibrational emanation. Because the moment you still see, we feel as vulnerable in how other people see you or judge you, and you kind of hide away, or you get a little, you know, twitchy even, you will vibrate with that, and they'll feel it. So it's kind of like, it's the blind spot that becomes a weak point, and they're kind of gonna use it to pull you back into something. But when there's nothing anymore, like I said, that exists in the framework of duality, there's nothing to kind of perpetuate. It's just like it dissolves. Okay, so this explaining without the need to be apologetic, it's just like just stating through a sense of forgiveness who you are, where you are, and give other people a sense that you know where they're also coming from. And sometimes they'll try to pull you with things like, yeah, but you said or did this, blah, 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 because they don't understand that sometimes you did or said certain things for a reason, to trigger or activate something. Just don't go there. Sometimes it's not about ignorance. It's about addressing only the things that come from unity, because otherwise you get entangled in conversations that will be pulling you apart. There'll be more and more. We're not here to kind of create more of this space in between, more separation. We are here to bring as bridges, act as the bringing of the dawn. You know, I belong to the family of the dawns, which is we're here to bring the light of illumination into the worlds of creation, which is the structure of the glue of divine love. So that means we're not even here to help. A lot of times people want to help other people, but helping is not, Spirit always shows me, it's not the same as selflessly being of service. When you're just there, you're there, your door is open, but you're not actively seeking people to help because you think the world needs to wake up to the notion of your perception. The divine knows, okay? So, well, just simply being there, ready, always at the mode of being on alert, you will be always ready to help, to be of service. It's a different kind of helping. It's neutral. And overall, seeing the bigger picture, even seeing them, which means seeing them through the feeling lens of where they are. Why are they being that way? So you're saying people are this way towards me. Yeah, go back, see, trace it. Why? Because when you're conscious, you can do that. You have that gift. That's the true gift of an empath, is not to say what you feel has more value because yours is more awakened, but it is the gift of seeing with the eye of Source, as Source sees it, which is compassion for all. You as a human have your own story to play out. You have your own reality. You don't have to participate and engage with everything. Of course, you're on your mission. You do your thing. But it doesn't have to be at expense of ignoring other people, being completely detached from the world, and not doing this integration. Because remember, when you integrate the earthly, the physical family, a sense of belonging here, you actually connect to your galactic family, when it's actually a paradox, because the more you also relate to the realms of where you truly belong, your true source and source family, it will also bleed through into your earthly experience, because that's the union. It doesn't go upwards or downwards. It's an inwardly intrinsic experience where it's a simultaneous. So the unity of the all is the union of one, and vice versa. So I hope this video kind of helped you to see and assess where you are in your life. Remember, again, this is intense time of the Scorpio energy. Use it, but use it for good. Use it to integrate. Don't become too overly obsessed either with the light or the shadow. Don't seek it out, like, you know, for a reason so you're going to be more advanced. Your soul progression and evolution through this advancement will happen naturally when you focus on what is right in front of you in the now. And when you are a neutrally bystanding observer, when you're conscious, when you're present, remember the only program of Source is to be conscious. You're not here to just fulfill tasks, you know, and sometimes you get too disoriented from what's really happening, because sometimes you think you need to do this and this and that. But maybe the bigger picture is, no, you need to just be more compassionate. You need to be more inclusive. You need to be more loving. How? Well, the union, the Lumen Union, you know, versus union. Okay, so if you have any more questions, you know where to find me. There's always personal work available with me via counseling sessions, which work on this union level, which is, I feel where you are, and we together help to integrate that energy presently playing out in your life. But also there's courses that I have created. The last one now is coming. So take this time to really help your advancement during the Scorpio time. So if you feel you could, you know, you could develop further, take the initiative, or, you know, go and get one of the mastery courses that are specifically designed through spirit as these levels through which the soul progresses, and also has this physical experience with this sense of evolution. So thank you for watching. You can also become, if you want to support these videos, there's going to be more and more free courses, you know, also, and these topics is very time consuming. You can become my Patreon as well on my channel. So go check that out. All the links are down below, and check out the audiobooks. There's also a training program for volunteer souls, which is the kind of like the understanding of the levels we go through to master the energetic discernment and energetic responses in relation to what we're here to do as our mission. So this is a cosmic training for volunteer souls mini audiobook, and much more. So go check that out, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Stay connected. So much love, wisdom, and power. Bye bye.